Hello, everybody. Mark Schaftlein with you, and this is Election Edge, Wednesday's edition, 6 o'clock on the East Coast, 3 o'clock out west. Happy to have you with us today on another just insane day in presidential politics. And I tell you what, it's like getting the band back together. Dr. Steve Turley, welcome back to Election Edge. Happy to have you with me today.
Oh, thanks for having me back, Mark. Let's go. Let's get rocking.
Hey, listen, are you starting to get the sense that I am, Steve, that the media has, it's still the Harris coronation, I get it, but I'm getting the sense that the mainstream, the legacy media is finally saying, wait a second here. This has been a gaslight election. They've done no interviews. And even with her first sit down scheduled for tomorrow with Dana Bash at CNN, she's bringing along her sidekick, Governor Tim. I mean, what the hell? She can't even do an interview by herself. I've seen some of the networks roll back the old Lester Holt interview. Steve, what gives here? I mean, this lady wants to be president of the United States, and we're almost on 40 days, and she hasn't given an interview. And now it's finally a sit down with her, Governor Tim, and Dana Bash. What the hell's going on here?
Yeah. I mean, I think you summarized actually what's going on pretty well. I mean, Harris has one constant throughout her entire political career, and everybody in the permanent political class knows this. Everybody at the New York Times knows this. Everybody at the Washington Post knows this. Everyone at CNN knows this. She has one constant throughout her entire political career, and that's the more people get to know her, the less they like her. I mean, she's less likable than Hillary Clinton. I mean, let that hit you. We have to remember she barely won her first major race, her attorney general election. The Republican came within just a point or two of actually pulling that election off, of winning that election. Mark, in California, in the bluest of blue states, her entire career has been about appeasing those in power in Democrat politics, who then in turn anoint her, just like they're doing now, as the next Democrat successor. But in the past, it's always been in a very deep blue state, whereas now she actually has to compete for votes. And historically, she's a disaster when it comes to the national stage. She didn't win a single delegate in the 2020 primary. She had to drop out before Iowa, before the caucuses, because she was barely breaking 1%. And now, true to form, she actually lost support as a result of the Democrat convention. Generally speaking, you're coming out of those conventions, anywhere with, a 8, 9, sometimes a double-digit bounce. We saw that with Hillary. Monmouth had her up 10 after her convention, 2016. Morris had Hillary up 10. Fox News had Hillary up nearly 10. I mean, heck, with Biden, one pollster had Biden winning by 15 points coming out of the DNC in 2020. Kamala went the opposite direction. The Polymarket's betting odds for who's more likely to win the presidential election swung by double digits to Trump during the course of the convention week, during the very week she was supposed to get about. They were supposed to swing even more her way. I think largely, by the way, because the betting markets knew that Robert Kennedy was dropping out. He was about to join forces with Trump. They knew that would give Trump a huge boost, particularly in the swing states, as it did. So I think they are employing a Biden basement strategy 2.0. I actually live 20 minutes away from Biden's basement. I'm in the Philly area in Delaware. So I'm just 20 minutes away from the last time they tried to pull the wool over people's eyes. People did not like that then. They had serious buyer's remorse, and I don't think they're going to like it now. And I think you're starting to see that. The media is starting, particularly the New York Times, they're starting to get really nervous here. They're seeing the internal polling. They're not seeing the puff polls that are being thrown out there with response bias. They're seeing the internal polling. David Axelrod was talking about this recently. He came out and said during the Democrat convention, if the election were held today, Trump would win. That's what the internal polls are showing. They paid, a lot of people don't know this, they paid tens of millions of dollars
Oh, yeah.
for internal polling so as to know where to spend their hundreds of millions. And their internal polling is generally excellent, generally very accurate. And she's losing. She's losing to Trump right now. And New York Times is starting to get really nervous because they don't see this strategy that they're employing with Biden Basement 2.0 as working.
You know, we talked a little bit about this on Election Edge yesterday. The New York Times had some scathing comments about Kamala Harris. I mean, I'm going to pull out my notes from yesterday. Trump can win the election on character. Harris is weak and a phony. Just it's ignorant on issues. I mean, Steve, these were coming out of a column in the New York Times. Now, arguably, it was by a conservative columnist, but the fact that the New York Times would even publish 3 damning pieces like that, I had the sense that the Harris honeymoon was over. And yes, okay, she's going to sit down. We don't want to criticize Dana Bash because I actually thought, and I've said this on Election Edge yesterday, in the Biden-Trump debate, I thought her and Jake Tapper conducted as moderators. I thought they were fair. And Trump said afterward he thought they were fair. So, she can pick and choose who she wants to do the interviews with, but I have a gut feeling, and I don't think I'm wrong about this. I mean, this has been, Steve, I've never seen anything like it in American politics. You thought it was bad when Hillary Clinton was the nominee. No, this is Hillary Clinton was nothing compared to what the media's tried to do with Kamala Harris. And Steve, I think it's just they didn't like Trump when Hillary ran against him, but boy, they really hate him now. I mean, it's bad. And for her to be sitting here, we're going to watch that interview tomorrow, but can you think that ABC, CBS, NBC, MSNBC, Fox, do you think these reporters from the legacy media outlets are going to be happy that her and Walz do one interview and that's going to be the end of it? Hell, you've got people in her own campaign saying, well, why should we do interviews? And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, I mean, this makes no sense at all as a strategy. And I'm in your camp. I mean, the public polling is showing her up. Real Clear Politics is probably on the low side, Steve, anywhere 1.7 approximate lead.
Yeah,
others have shown her up about 3. You and I know damn good and well she's not up 3 points because both campaigns, as you mentioned, the internal polling, it's not showing that. Right. So, Steve, is this going to be a one and done interview, or what are they going to do here? Because Trump and Vance, they're out everywhere. I mean, you cannot criticize for them for getting in front of a camera. And we'll talk a little bit more about what J.D. Vance encountered later in the show. But my God, what do you think, Stephen? What's going to happen next?
They are experiencing their own kind of civil war, or their own clash, their own cognitive dissonance as a collective institution. The legacy media is. So at the one level, they're gaslight, like you just said. I think you summed it up perfectly. They're gaslighting at levels we never even imagined because they are deliberately trying to fabricate a candidate here, right? Keep in mind, a candidate that did not get a single vote in a primary. We haven't seen this before. I don't think we've seen this since Gerald Ford, to be honest. We're living in the midst of what Joel Kotkin of Chapman University calls neo-feudalism. Our society is no longer liberal, classical liberal in any way, shape, or form. We are now living in a caste system, a social caste system, akin to medieval feudalism, where a tremendous amount of power and affluence has been accumulated in the hands of very, very few people, and they force compliance with this new arrangement through a new kind of religious fundamentalism, which is wokeness. And so as part of this neo-feudalist caste structure, all major institutions are being integrated into a billionaire bureaucrat alliance. We saw that particularly via the Twitter files. This billionaire bureaucrat alliance that is amassing tremendous power and affluence in the hands of very, very few people, totally unprecedented in many ways, such that now the legacy media is officially the mouthpiece for that neo-feudalist aristocracy. Gone are the days where they speak truth to power. They're part of corporations now that are in effect, literally, in some cases, married to bureaucrats. So they are not speaking truth to power, Mark. They are redefining truth in accordance with the powers that be. And the powers that be...
Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
The powers that be after Brexit in June of 2016 and Trump in November 2016, again, we know this from the Twitter files, the powers that be no longer trust the will of the people, and they will do whatever they must do to thwart the will of the people that they now see as an existential threat to their power and affluence. So you've got that. That's what the legacy media is. But they also have to maintain some level of credibility. And in the age of the network society, where we're no longer related to each other by virtue of our proximity to each other, we're related to each other by virtue of our hyper connectivity into the internet. In the age of the network society, we all have instant access to digital information. We have the media can no longer monopolize or control information any more than the post office can control mail. we now, through Twitter and through even with Telegram, you name it, we can bypass the legacy media in a manner akin to the way email and text messaging bypasses the post office. So we saw it when Trump was shot on J13. I mean, we had CNN. When CNN was telling us that the Secret Service was escorting Trump off the stage because of loud popping sounds, or that the Secret Service was attending to Trump after he fell, when they were giving nonsense like this, we were all getting second-by-second updates on X. That's the network society. And they know they can't compete with that anymore. They know their lies are getting exposed in real time. And so they are caught between a rock and a hard place. They've got to be the mouthpiece for the powers that be and reframe truth in accordance with their narratives. And they are at the same time competing with a mass population that has immediate access to digital information that bypasses their monopoly in a way comparable to how texting bypasses the post office. And so they've got to maintain some semblance of credibility, and you're just seeing this very strange hybrid emerge out of that.
Well, and if you take what the legacy mainstream media is doing, Google's trying to take it a step further by further censoring information. I mean, go look for information on the Trump assassination. I mean, it's not easy to find it. No, so it's like Google, the digital behemoth. They basically have come out and tried to carry on what the mainstream media was doing. And then you have Meta, which used to be called Facebook, finally stepping up and admitting what we've all known for years, that the Biden-Harris administration deliberately pressured them to censor conservatives. I mean, Steve, again, that's one of the reasons you're on the air and we're on the air, and we're trying to get the word out about what's really going on. But folks, this is serious stuff. I mean, we're getting ready to have an election. I shouldn't say election day. Election season starts in about 2 weeks or less.
Right.
And for the next 69, 70 days, I kid you not, and we're going to talk about this after the break, this is the most critical election in the history of this country. We're going to talk about on the other side how Kamala Harris is literally trying to distance herself from the Biden administration, and she's got the media trying to help her out. Be back in 90 seconds, and we're going to dive into it. You cannot miss this piece.
Former National Security Advisor Lieutenant General Michael Flynn pleaded guilty today to lying to the FBI.
He was one of the most respected generals in the military.
Every American needs this historical DVD keepsake. Flynn delivered the truth, whatever the cost. Hand signed by General Michael Flynn. Order now at the Patriot TV store. Use promo code PTV at checkout to get special savings. The Patriot TV store, a secure, hassle-free shopping experience.
Throughout history, the spirit of patriotism has prevailed. The battles may have changed, but the values remain the same. Today, in 2024, we find ourselves at a pivotal moment where the call for unity, freedom, and a better future echoes louder than ever. For more than 10 years, Patriot Mobile has been committed to supporting the values that make our nation great. With affordable plans and reliable nationwide coverage, Patriot Mobile is not just a wireless service. It's a call to action for those who believe in the American dream. Because this year is not just any year, it's the most important year since our nation's founding. Choose a wireless carrier that shares your values. Choose Patriot Mobile.
The world is about to shift. Banks are going cashless globally with the emergence of central bank digital currency, which will bring with it programmable money and the ability to turn on or off your purchasing power based on your digital social profile. It's like the equivalent of spyware in your bank account. You need to get out of the system with the world's safest and most precious assets, silver and gold. Call Kirk Elliott Precious Metals at 720-605-3900. That's 720-605-3900.
And we're back. 720-605-3900. Dr. Kirk Elliott, great supporter of Patriot TV. For all you patriots out there, pick up the phone, get a little bit of your portfolio in gold. Kirk Elliott is a great supporter of this network. All right, Steve, we're back in action here. This election is starting to hit bizarro land, and let me explain to you where I'm coming from here. Kamala Harris, the sitting vice president, is doing everything she possibly can to distance herself from the Biden administration. I mean, this is going to make you laugh, folks. So I got to throw a little bit of humor into the show. J.D. Vance is out giving a speech, and in his speech, he's talking about how Kamala Harris is by her own admission, is the last person in the room when Biden made the Afghanistan decision. Biden and her out there talking about how she's an integral part of the decision making, and Vance, basically tied them together. So the left-wing website Politico comes out with a hit piece saying J.D. Vance ties Harris to the Biden administration. I looked at the headline, and folks, I'm sorry for laughing about it. But I said, wait a minute, ties her to Biden? Hell, she's the sitting vice president. And social media apparently ripped Politico a new one based upon that. I mean, Steve, that somebody referred to it as the apex of gaslighting. And I started off the show calling this the gaslight election. Steve, this is insane what's going on right now.
That was definitely insane, and I think even again members of the legacy media were looking at Politico, it has become just a mouthpiece for the Democratic Party. It's basically just a Democrat super PAC at this point. But even members of the legacy media were like, guys, you gotta finesse this. You can't be that blunt. You can't be that bold. For heaven's sakes, everyone could see through that. I think Byron York of the Washington Examiner noted this a couple of months back, that Trump actually has the easiest campaign pitch in the world. And his campaign pitch is when I was president, we had prosperity at home and peace abroad. Biden came in and basically ruined everything. Vote for me and I'll bring peace and prosperity back. So when I was president, things were great in America. Biden came in, ruined everything. Vote for me and I'll make America great again. So what you're seeing now is that Trump has a very high retrospective job approval rating. So when voters are asked, how would you rate Trump's job as president today, he's polling in the mid-50s. It's a very high retrospective job approval. And so that's ultimately what was crushing Biden. People believe when all is said and done that Trump was the better president. You can compare. This is the advantage that Trump has of being a hybrid candidate. Dick Morris refers to him as a hybrid. He's part incumbent, part candidate, or part incumbent, part insurgent, as Rich Barris likes to say, the People's Pundit. So he's got a record, but he's new, right? Well, Kamala's got a record, but nobody likes it. So what they're trying to do, Politico in particular, and most shamelessly, is they're trying to convince you that Kamala is entirely new. So you see the unique strength of Trump in that he's able, as a hybrid candidate, to bring the strength of the incumbency together with the strength of being something new. He's an incumbent with a job approval rating very high right now, and yet he's new. He's not the current disaster of this administration. It's polling very, very low. 7 in 10 voters in the country consistently disapprove of the Biden administration on all the major issues: southern border, the economy, inflation, alike. So that means the legacy media is working overtime to try to create the perception that Kamala is entirely new. She's something entirely different from Biden. But then they destroy the incumbent advantage that a VP should have. So again, this is what I mean when I think people in the New York Times and others are starting to panic a little bit, going, this strategy isn't working. She's danged if she does, she's danged if she doesn't. If she tries to flex her incumbent muscles, she ends up not being able to escape the shadow of an incredibly unpopular administration. If she tries to flex that she's entirely new, then she actually sets herself up for exactly what J.D. Vance and Trump are saying. She's just Biden 2.0. She's been with Biden every step of the way. And she was out there celebrating that over the last 3.5 years. So they've got all the footage. So everybody could see either she was lying then or she's lying now.
Well, you mentioned about trying to prop her up as the new face, and look, we're about honesty on this show, folks. And if she is perceived as the new blood in this race, the fresh face, okay, and this turns out to be their successful strategy, if she distances herself from those Biden policies, and the media is trying to make her the new girl, the it girl, okay, this is the fresh face, folks. No, it's really not. It's the old Biden policies, only many times worse. When you look at her positions, she is to the left of Bernie Sanders, way to the left of the Biden administration. So, Steve, she literally, if this election turns out to be the fresh face, the new blood, and becomes a character issue of that versus Trump, she could win. If it turns out to be that the middle-class voters are more concerned about policies and how it affects them and their pocketbook on inflation, on the economic growth of the country, on the fact that a lot of illegals are scattered all across the country, bringing in drugs, crime, you name it, and it's affecting a lot of communities. If it's about that and U.S. security, Trump will win. But if the Democratic Party, and so far they've had some degree of success in painting her as this new face, a la what we just sort of joked about that Politico tried to do, distancing her from her existing job. And Steve, you're right. If Trump will go out there and clearly delineate, hey, under me, we had peace and prosperity, and quit talking about crowd size and all that other crap that nobody cares about, I think Trump eventually will run away with it, despite the fact the sort of media polls are showing a slightly different story. But as you and I mentioned, when you get inside the campaigns, and as you mentioned, these folks, when they see the internal polling in there, it is very, very expensive. Why is it expensive? Because they're going to the nth degree of detail that these public polling places are not. I mean, you're not going to see an internal poll that is going to misrepresent what the voting block is likely to be. As an example, Stephen, I'm talking really like a 40,000 foot level here. If the electorate's made up of 29% Democrats, 28% Republicans, and 54% independents or other, they're not going to internally, they're going to sample it the right way. They'll get the right demographic sample. They'll look at likely voters versus registered voters. They won't increase the sample size for Democrats. They won't pull more people in California or New York, who are going to vote blue, much like they're going to overpoll in Kentucky or Indiana, which are going to vote red. I mean, that's why they pay those big bucks, because they know what they're doing. And Steve, I've just been astounded the last couple of days. I mean, when this campaign started, we got some footage we'll show you later in the show. Did you ever think that Kamala Harris was going to come out against the electric vehicle mandate? Biden championed that. But he says, he beat his chest on that. We're gonna force, even though you may not want these damn electric cars, we are gonna force you to buy them. Harris says, no, I'm not for that. She comes out and she says, well, and it's the old Dave McCormick ad. We showed it on this. We've showed the ad many times. In the ad, a guy says, well, what do you do with these energy workers? Well, we'll transition them to new jobs. And you're opposed to fracking? Yes, I'm opposed to fracking. Well, now that Pennsylvania looks like Trump might be. No, I am for fracking. But what are you talking about? I'm for fracking? Yeah. I mean, Steve, she is literally taking Trump's policies. I mean, we joke about it. The tax on tips is like this important compared to some of these other policies. I mean, it's astounding.
Yeah, it is. It is. And again, it exemplifies a total lack of confidence in her electability. If they were truly confident in her electability, she'd be going full Keir Starmer of the Labour Party, right? That they just had their election across the pond in Britain, and the Tories over the last 14 years were so notoriously unpopular. It was actually a campaign by conservatives to make sure Tories got 0 seats in their last national parliamentary elections. Labour, all the polls showed Labour was guaranteed to win by double digits, guaranteed in all the polls. And so how did they campaign? Well, given how unpopular and how betrayed voters felt towards the Tories, how did Labour campaign? They campaigned on open borders. They campaigned on higher taxes. They campaigned on all kinds of insane socialist woke policies because they were confident they were going to win. Kamala is the exact opposite. She's doing everything she possibly can to try to make herself look like she's got this funny kind of blonde hair, and she walks around with a red tie and some bravado and so forth. Rush Limbaugh used to point out that strategy almost never works when you adopt the policies of your opponent, because what you end up basically doing is endorsing your opponent. He always said this about Republicans trying to mimic Democrats. He said, voters hear that and they basically say, okay, well, if you just in effect endorsed your opponent, why should I go with you since you're just a cheap imitation? Why not just go with the real thing? Why not go with the candidate I know will deliver because that's the air they breathe, versus you who just looked at the results from some focus group and adjusted your positions accordingly. I'm seeing it with Bob Casey. I'm in the Pennsylvania area, so I get Pennsylvania television. I'm seeing with Bob Casey in the Senate race. He's running as a bona fide populist. It's hilarious. The only thing he's missing is a red hat and saying "Make America Great Again." But he's running on border security. He's running on bringing back manufacturing, industrial jobs. But yet, as McCormick is pointing out in his commercials, yet he voted with Biden 98% of the time. And so I don't know. Go for it.
Let me ask you a question on that, Steve. You're in the state. Have you seen that Dave McCormick ad that shows Harris's flip-flop? I mean, is that thing still playing in Pennsylvania?
Yeah. Oh, it's brilliant. It's good stuff. Yeah. No, Harris is getting hammered right now in the political commercials. Her commercials look pathetic in comparison to what both McCormick and Trump are bringing out here. It's really good. They're doing a very, very good job here. Again, Pennsylvania, if Pennsylvania is a barometer of where this election is going, and Kamala's flip-flops are a barometer, it's going to be a nationalist populist election. So that's good. That's great. That works right, and that plays right into Trump's hands. This is going to be an election about border security. It's going to be an election about energy independence. It's going to be an election about making our economy great again. And then you bring in Robert Kennedy, who brings in the populist left bona fides with this sort of rapprochement, this realignment with the populist right. They've been doing that in Europe a lot, bringing the populist left and populist right together to destroy the establishment. And they've changed politics. They've changed politics in France. They've changed politics in Italy. They changed politics in Hungary. It's pretty astonishing stuff what happens when the populist segments come together, because we're finding the establishment that, center right, center left just doesn't have the numbers to take them on. So if that's what we're seeing, November promises to be epic.
I'm with you on that. I mean, we're going to take a break, but I'll close it with this, folks, before we go to break. Did you ever think you would hear Kamala Harris say, build the wall? That's the gaslight election that we're in right now. All right, we're going to take a break for 90 seconds. And when we come back, we're going to give you that special treat, that Dave McCormick ad that is just, it is spot on about Kamala Harris. We'll be back in 90 seconds.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is General Mike Flynn, and I'm inviting you to join me on September 4th at 4 p.m. Eastern. That's September 4th, 4 p.m. Eastern. Mark that on your calendars. We'll be live on Patriot TV. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking only to our Patriot TV defenders for an exclusive discussion, a Q&A, if you will. Your presence is crucial as we dive into the matters that shape our great nation. And again, this is only for the Patriot TV. So if you go to patriot.tv, you can register today. There's a banner at the top of the website. You can sign up for September 4th, 4 p.m. Eastern. Together, let's stand strong for America's future. God bless you and God bless America.
Access to these events will be members only. So go to patriot.tv, click on Become a Member. It's fast and easy. Become a member today. Just go to patriot.tv, click on Become a Member, join today.
And we're back. Hey, folks, take General Flynn's advice. Click that button, Patriot Defenders. Sign up, become a Patriot Defender. You'll be helping Patriot.tv, and General Flynn will be doing Q&As for you. You'll be able to talk to him. We'll have a lot of the show hosts on in future episodes talking to him, and we're going to have a big event in Venice in February. All right, so Madam Producer, if you could, for the benefit of our audience, if you could roll that Dave McCormick ad, which is so popular in Pennsylvania, and we'll talk about it on the other side.
Kamala Harris is inspiring and very capable. The more people get to know her, they're going to be particularly impressed by her ability.
The nonpartisan GovTrack has rated you as the most liberal senator.
I am prepared to get rid of the filibuster to pass a Green New Deal. There's no question I'm in favor of banning fracking.
Would you ban offshore drilling?
Yes.
What is the solution for voters in the fossil fuel industry?
Giving the workers an ability to transition. We're not going to treat people who are undocumented across the border as criminals. That's correct.
Raise your hand if you think it should be a civil offense rather than a crime to cross the border without documentation.
Abolish ICE.
Yeah.
Is that a position you agree with?
And we need to probably think about starting from scratch.
Outdated, it is wrong-headed thinking to think that the only way you're going to get communities to be safe is to put more police officers on the street.
Would you support changing the dietary guidelines?
Yes.
The food pyramid. What people
yes.
To reduce red meat specifically.
Yes.
People who are convicted in prison, like the Boston Marathon bomber, on death row, people who are convicted of sexual assault, they should be able to vote?
I think we should have that conversation.
We have to have a buyback program, and I support a mandatory buyback program.
So for people out there who like their insurance, well, they don't get to keep it.
Let's eliminate all of that. Let's move on. I am opposed to any policy that would deny any human being public health, period.
The more people get to know her, they're going to be particularly impressed by her ability.
Steve, how's that ad playing in Pennsylvania, given that she's trying to change her positions to Trump's now? Well, give us a sort of, from the epicenter on the ground, what's happening in PA?
Oh, she's getting crushed in PA right now. Pennsylvania. It looks like Pennsylvania may be slipping through their fingers. It looks like that. We'll have to see. I mean, we've still got 70 days or so. But we now have the stats on mail-in ballot requests. Mail-in ballot requests for Democrats are down over 60% from this time in 2020. We've got Scott Pressler out there. who's doing Republican voter registration, which is really important in Pennsylvania because Pennsylvania has a high degree of what's called low propensity to no propensity voters. So these are voters who haven't voted in the last several elections or who haven't voted at all. And all the polling that we do of those low propensity, no propensity voters shows they are overwhelmingly pro-Trump. They're the ones who won Brexit. Everyone thought that the more the UK came out, the bigger the vote, the more the pro-EU side would benefit because of the cosmopolitan metropolitan centers. Actually, it was the opposite. They came out in full force, but what had not come out in full force and had never been polled were the rural voters, the working class voters who basically sat out of UK politics for the last decade because there was nobody to vote for. They came out en masse and they won. They voted overwhelmingly for Brexit. Same thing is happening here in Pennsylvania. Low propensity, no propensity voters are getting registered such that counties like Bucks County, which has always been Democrat. I used to live in Bucks County. It flipped. It's now majority Republican. So this is one of the key indicators that you can see in terms of what's predictive for November is the voter registration trends. And it's not just Pennsylvania. It's Arizona. It's Nevada. It's Georgia. It's California. Republicans are rocking it. They're not going to win, obviously, but Kamala's not going to win by the margins that Hillary or Biden had in 2016 and 2020, which shows you she's not going to get the margin she needs in a state like Pennsylvania. So, no, it's very, very good. Trump really looks like he is crushing it in Pennsylvania.
Well, I've seen some stats that in Pennsylvania since the 2020 election, Republicans have dramatically cut the gap. There used to be 1 million more registered Democrats in Pennsylvania than there are Republicans. It's down to like under 400,000 now, I believe, Dr. Steve. And if the Republicans continue those efforts, coupled with Trump and obviously her policies, which are very anti-Pennsylvania, that's got to help him. I have one question for you. And I've heard there's a lot of hunters in Pennsylvania who are not registered. Is there an effort being made to get those gun owners who will, probably vote for Trump 90% to get them registered into the polls?
Well, I believe so. So if your listeners know Scott Pressler, he moved to Pennsylvania. He's a voter registration genius. He moved to Pennsylvania just to make sure the Keystone State turned red. It's a big state, over 10 million in population. And it really is sort of the gateway into the Midwest. So it's got Philly on one side, it's got Pittsburgh on the other, and it's got Alabama in between. That's how Robert Barnes puts it, which I just think is a brilliant description of the demographics of Pennsylvania. But like you said, there's just a lot of low propensity, no propensity voters who Amish, for example, they don't get polled by definition. They don't have phones. They don't have any way or computers. But there's 80,000 of them, and then 90% of them come out and vote Republican. So, yeah, I think there are efforts out there. I don't know how extensive it is. I know Laura Trump and Mike Whatley have been very much on the front lines of trying to make sure that they don't make the same mistake they made in 2020 and 2022 in allowing the Democrats to have voter registration and early mail-in ballot registration advantages that just are just so hard to overcome on Election Day, especially when you see, the kind of shenanigans we saw in Maricopa County, for example, of voting equipment breaking down however conveniently.
Well, if Donald Trump can take Pennsylvania, and I think Pennsylvania is the key to this election, because whichever candidate wins Pennsylvania is in a colossal advantage. Let me give you an example, Steve. He takes Pennsylvania. I firmly believe he's going to win Georgia. I really believe that because I think a lot of African-American men are pissed off because they think that Biden sold them down the river. They don't think Harris offers them anything. And I think there will be the difference in Georgia, coupled with a lot of people, rural voters. I don't think Harris is going to, and Walz with their policies, can come anywhere close to getting those voters, despite the media, again, trying to gaslight you to believe that, oh, no, Harris has all of a sudden turned into the second coming of Ronald Reagan. People are not going to buy that stuff. So, Steve, if you're right, and I believe you are, and polling has shown Pennsylvania very tight, but in 15 out of 17 polls, Trump, by anywhere from half a point to a point and a half, has consistently been in the lead. And if that registration continues to go the way it is, I think he could win Pennsylvania. And I think he wins Georgia. And what that means, folks, again, you're hearing on Election Edge, we're telling you the real story, not what the legacy and the fake media are going to tell you. If he wins those two states, he has multiple paths to win this election. He won North Carolina the last two times he ran. Now, you're seeing some polling that shows her up by a point in North Carolina. In theory, he could win Pennsylvania. He could win Georgia. He could lose North Carolina. I don't think he will. I think he'll win it. But then he would only have to win one other state: Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, Nevada. So winning Pennsylvania opens the map to multiple avenues to victory, Steve.
Yeah. No, I think it's over. If he wins Pennsylvania, it is. He hits 270 plus. I'm with you. I think Arizona's gone. I don't think there's any way they're gonna. You could tell they're not even putting a lot of money in Arizona. They're not putting a lot of money in Georgia. They've lost Nevada. It looks like Trump's could be the first Republican to win Nevada since 2004. This is largely because a lot of the Latino vote has switched on over to the pro-Trump train, not necessarily pro-Republican. The Republicans got a way to go, but Trump, big time. And again, because those low propensity voters tend to come out and vote for him overwhelmingly. So if he's got the Sun Belt, if he's got Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, then it could be any. It could be Wisconsin, Michigan, or Pennsylvania. Just one of those three, he wins. That's 270 plus. No, the Harris campaign is blowing a lot of smoke. I mean, there is no way Harris is coming anywhere near winning North Carolina. Right now, we've had the third poll in a row that shows that Trump is polling within the margin of error in Virginia. Now, Mark,
I saw that. It's like 3 points, right?
Exactly. You got it. It's the third poll in a row that shows him within a 3-point. She has a 3-point lead. He's within 3 points of her margin of error. Mark, if he is within 3 points of Harris in a state that this time in 2020, Biden had an 18-point lead and then ended up winning by 10 points. If he's within 3, Virginia, there is no way he is even close to losing North Carolina. That's significantly more Republican vote. And by the way, that includes Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. If he is within 3 in Virginia, he is up 4, 5, 6 in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. I would not be surprised if he maintains this kind of leverage. I would not be surprised of him taking Pennsylvania by 4 or 5 points. I would not be surprised. I know it's always been close.
Yeah. I mean, given some of the shenanigans, again, we're not of what happened in 2020, he needs to win it by a couple points, more than a couple points, just to have a little insurance there. But I'm going to tell you, from everything that you're telling me, Steve, and I'm sort of buying what you're selling there. If he loses Virginia by 3 or less, he will be the 47th president, because her only chance, let's gameplay this out before we go to break. Assuming it's 3 or less in Virginia, that tells me he will win North Carolina, he will win Georgia. Okay, if he does that, and I agree with you, Steve, he's ahead in Arizona and Nevada right now, that means the blue wall has to stand. Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, that's her only chance to get to 270. And if these numbers are right that we're talking about on Pennsylvania, and I'm going to say Dr. Steve lives there. So as we get closer and closer, you will see literally the gaslight election. They are going to try to get voters to believe something that's not really happening as their only method of winning. Because when you take, and Trump needs to do this, he needs to take what you said about peace, prosperity, he'll get, work on the economy, he'll seal this border, crime will go down, and America can become prosperous again. If he does that and then sprinkles in a little San Francisco liberal every now and then, forget talking about what she looks like, crowd size, all that stuff, and focus on the winning issues, sort of like his partner J.D. Vance talks about at every stop, then I think happy times will be here again. All right, we're going to take our break, mid-course break, and well, our last break. This has gone on so fast. I'm having so much fun. All right, our final break, and then when we come back, we're going to break down some of the obstacles that the Democrats are throwing at Trump to try to beat him. Be back in 90 seconds.
Throughout history, the spirit of patriotism has prevailed. The battles may have changed, but the values remain the same. Today, in 2024, we find ourselves at a pivotal moment where the call for unity, freedom, and a better future echoes louder than ever.
For more than 10 years, Patriot Mobile has been committed to supporting the values
that make our nation great. With affordable plans and reliable nationwide coverage, Patriot Mobile is not just a wireless service. It's a call to action for those who believe in the American dream. Because this year is not just any year, it's the most important year since our nation's founding. Choose a wireless carrier that shares your values. Choose Patriot Mobile.
Attention business owners, are you ready to advertise to millions of loyal patriots ready to buy your products or services? Here's your golden opportunity to advertise with Mark Schaftlein. When you advertise on Election Edge, you've aligned your company with a trusted voice and connected with an audience that shares your values. Mark hosts the exciting new live show that delves into every facet of the 2024 U.S. presidential election, offering insightful analysis, expert interviews, and up-to-the-minute coverage of the key events and developments throughout the election season. When you advertise on Election Edge, you're aligning your brand with integrity, loyalty, and a dedication to truth. Mark's audience is passionate, conservative, and committed to the values your business stands for. When given the choice, Mark's followers will buy your product or service over other woke companies. Don't miss this opportunity to elevate your brand with the power of Patriot TV. Reach out to us today at advertise@patriot.tv.
And we're back with Dr. Steve. Hey, I said they would throw everything but the kitchen sink at Trump. I mean, here we have Jack Smith yesterday, after the Supreme Court has given absolute immunity to his actions as president, putting this bogus recharge of these 4 points again, Steve. And even, I mean, every legal analyst I've listened to have said these don't stand a snowball's chance. They should be thrown out. But here again, they're trying lawfare. I got to believe, Steve, the average person is going to say, this enough is enough of this stuff. And I'm hoping it backfires.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm with you. I think you can guarantee. I mean, if history, if president holds, yeah, it's going to backfire. I mean, there's just no way around this. Whether anyone likes it or not, indictments endear Trump to non-white working class voters. Indictments endear Trump to non-white working class voters. We've got all the data on that. For millions and millions of particularly non-white voters, Trump's indictments, and particularly that mugshot, made him instantly one of them. So voters who have consistently voted Democrat are now voting Trump almost solely based on this weaponized lawfare. And you don't have to think too hard as to why this is. If you ask non-white voters, if you ask white voters, but particularly non-white voters, how many New York billionaire former presidents do you know? They would say, of course, nobody. But then if you ask them, how many people do you know that have been abused by a rigged legal system? Well, that's different. They may know several. And certainly a lot of people at some point in their lives, they know people who got arrested and for nefarious reasons and the like. So again, what this mugshot did, I owe this observation to Robert Barnes. This mugshot transferred Trump from one cultural space, the New York billionaire former president, to another cultural space, someone legally persecuted by an unfair and unjust system. And that transference has endeared Trump to voters that would have never given him the time of day prior to this. So in many ways, Jack Smith just gave Trump a huge gift, because what Trump has already been doing is he's been creating a coalition for 2024 that's maximized the rural white vote that came out in mass in 2016 and 2020, that are coming out even more now by all indicators in 2024. He's maximized the rural vote for himself, while at the same time minimizing the non-white working class vote for the Democrat. Both Biden and Kamala Harris were getting record low support among Latinos and among particularly black men. And so what Trump is doing is he's maximizing the rural white vote for himself, while at the same time minimizing the urban non-white working class vote for the Democrat. And that combination, it does not bode well for the Democrat in these swing states.
Well, I think you're right about that. And let me add something in that you talked about earlier related to the voting in the states. You mentioned Kennedy's name. We've had an interesting dynamic come up the last couple days, and I want to talk about two states in particular, Michigan and Wisconsin. You know, Kennedy had requested his name come off the ballot in the swing states, keep it on the ballot in the deep blue and the deep red states. But an interesting thing has happened. He wanted his name off the ballot in Wisconsin, and interestingly, the Democratic Party sued to keep Green Party candidate Jill Stein and Cornel West off the ballot. And in a sort of a ruling of consistency, if you will, the judge said, no, Kennedy, Stein, and West, all of you got to be on the ballot, because once you're on it, you can't, you don't have a right to come off of it. Well, I thought, okay, that's fairly consistent and it seems fair. And in Michigan, Kennedy tried to get his name removed, but they said, no, we can't, because you were officially nominated by this party and you got to be on the ballot. And there was one other state that he wanted to come off of, and they said, no, we've already printed the ballots and, you're going to be on. But Kennedy has gone out and said, in these swing states, vote for Trump. So, Steve, what do you think about Kennedy's effect, and how will that Stein and West also now? What do you think their effect is going to be on this race?
Yeah, well, there's no question we're already getting the data that shows that Robert Kennedy's endorsement is giving Trump 2-3 point boost in these key swing states. That's very important. It was Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, where he was particularly popular. I would, in terms of not removing his name from the ballot, does the same go for Biden? Does Biden's name have to stay there as well? So if the RNC is smart, if Mike Whatley and Laura Trump do this right, I think they should launch a lawsuit to keep Biden's name on those ballots, citing the very decision that was made to keep Cornel West and Jill Stein's names on there, and of course Robert Kennedy's. Again, I don't think we should lose sight of the fact that this exudes nervousness and anxiety on the part of the Democrats. A confident team doesn't engage in shenanigans like this. If you're truly up 7, 10, 15, 95 points, you're not going to waste your time with any nonsense like this. So once again, we're seeing an indicator that Democrats feel like they're going to lose without engaging in some kind of shenanigans with the ballots. But I don't think it's going to make a difference. We're seeing the polls move definitively toward Trump, particularly in the swing states. He's getting consistently about 60% of Kennedy's vote. Kennedy's vote is about 5% national average. It's actually bigger than that, because you can ask people in the polling, would you consider voting for RFK? You may not be voting for, but would you consider it? And all of a sudden, his support goes into double digits, goes in the low teens. So we're already seeing Trump with a 2 to 3 point bump, and then Trump again generally outperforms his polling by 4 or 5 points. He did that in 2016. He did that in 2020, because he brings out like no one else. He's a voter turnout machine. He brings out the low propensity, no propensity voter. The very ones who won him in 2016, who won Brexit and the like. So a whole host of voters come out and vote for him that don't respond to polls, like I said, the Amish in Pennsylvania. And so you combine them with the Kennedy effect. that is a very, very formidable bump in the polls. We're looking possibly upwards of 8-point bump, and that's going to propel him way beyond the margin of error, margin of fraud in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania.
Steve, let me ask you this question. I want to shift to the Senate real quick, because right now the Republicans effectively won West Virginia, so that makes the Senate, if the Republicans hold serve, and that's not a guarantee, folks, but assuming Ted Cruz wins Texas, Rick Scott wins Florida, they hold serve in their other states, then it'll be 50-45 with 5 undecided races. Now, Montana, John Tester is losing in Montana. Trump's going to win that state by 20 points. Now, Tester's been tough before. He has won when Trump has won in the state. So Tester is a survivor, but again, I think Montanans are starting to see through this, that he votes with Biden and Harris 98% of the time. So, you know, he can claim, and he's not even endorsing Harris. So he's trying to distance himself, but I think we got an excellent chance for a pickup there. We got news today that, my God, Larry Hogan in Maryland, you know, he's tied with his opponent, and that's a state that is 62% Democrat, 38% Republican. And Larry Hogan, who was a successful, I think, 2-term governor, is now tied. He was down like 10 points about a month ago, and now he's tied. So, I mean, if we could get those 2 pickups, that would be outstanding for the Senate. But let me ask you this. Your state of Pennsylvania, most of the polling I've seen shows Casey with a small lead over McCormick, 2-3 points. What are you seeing on the ground in Pennsylvania? I know McCormick is an effective candidate. Can he pull off the upset and win Pennsylvania?
Definitely. So if Trump is winning Pennsylvania, I mean, we're not talking anymore like, 40,000, 80,000 votes. If he's winning Pennsylvania by 4, 5, 6%, which he definitely can do based on the what I just elucidated there with Robert Kennedy's support, as well as his generally 4 or 5 point outperforming his polling. If he does that, McCormick should pull this off. It'll be a stunning upset, but he should pull it off. And it's simply because we generally don't do split tickets anymore. You had Susan Collins. She's really the last one who pulled it off back in Maine when everybody else was voting Biden in Maine. By the way, I think Trump is actually going to pull it off in Maine. It might be within literally 0.1%, but I think he's got a great shot at Maine, great shot at New Hampshire, because Bobby Kennedy's very popular. I'm originally from New England, and so it's really fun. We've been seeing Republican voter registrations through the roof in there. So the last time we really saw the split ticket, where voters went with the Democrat president but a Republican Senate race, was Maine with Susan Collins. They will vote down ticket. So if they're voting Trump in Pennsylvania, they're going to be voting Bob McCormick. There's no way around it. Montana, I think, is a done deal. I got to be honest with you. I don't think Tester stands a chance. Montana's gone way to the right since he was elected back in 2018. Way to their governor, Greg Gianforte, is a darling of Christian nationalists. Oh, evil, scary Christian nationalists. They have a supermajority of Republicans in their state legislature for the first time in their history. He's gone. He's done. Jim Justice will have no problem, obviously, winning West Virginia. So there it is. There's the Senate right there.
Well, Dr. Steve, we're about out of time. I can't thank you enough for coming back on Election Edge. I'm going to see you soon, I hope, because your insight is so valuable and our audience really enjoys your commentary. That's it for today. Election Edge will be back tomorrow. See you 6 o'clock Eastern, 3 o'clock on the West Coast. Thanks for viewing.